Looking for a creative outlet? Do you want to develop the artist within? The heritage crafts aren't just in the museum. Plenty of people just like you are putting a modern spin on these traditional skills. Weaving is an ancient textile craft used to make fabric or cloth. Weaving takes two distinct sets of yarn or thread which run horizontally and vertically and then interlace both together. This cloth is woven on a loom, a device for holding the threads in place while the filling threads are woven through them. Woven cloth can be plain in one color with a simple pattern, or it can be woven into decorative or artistic designs. Today, almost all fabrics for clothing, bedding, furniture, and curtains are woven by machine. Automated looms were in use during the early to mid-1800s when settlers came to this region, but the original pioneers were responsible to make almost everything, including their own cloth.
If they were a professional weaver that had come across, say, from Scotland, England, or Northern Europe, they probably would try to take part of their loom with them, but in general, looms were not brought with them. They would bring spinning wheels because they were a little harder to make. But a loom is really just pieces of square wood put together. So if you had a woodlot, you could actually make a loom, and hence you will see many of the barn looms that are out and about in various museums. They are just made of the large logs that were found by the pioneers. So they would typically not have that. It would be something that they would want to start relatively quickly because they did have to clothe themselves. So a loom was a very essential part of a household. There were certainly cottage weavers around, and the pioneers did weave for themselves. And in Ontario particularly, they did weave pretty well the fabrics that they needed. However, there were also a lot of professional weavers around who took care of the more intricate weaving, such as larger coverlets, more involved blankets, other clothing, dress fabrics, and so forth. And initially, of course, they would have their sheep and they would have their spinning wheel and they would spin the yarn. And by the way, it takes 8 spinners to keep one weaver busy. And they would do that on a small scale production. As quickly as possible, they probably would go to a more commercial weaver though. The hand weaving was a necessity, but like so many other things that are a necessity, as soon as we can finish doing it in our life cycle, we tend to pass that on to whoever does it professionally.
Machines can recreate almost anything that can be hand-woven at an affordable price. But hand weaving, like the other textile crafts, gives you a creative opportunity, plus produce a fabric that can be superior in quality.
This concept of being able to do something with one's hands and create something beautiful with one's hands, particularly because our world is so technologically advanced and we are so machine-oriented and computer-oriented that a lot of the hand skills have been taken away. So crafts like knitting and spinning and weaving become very satisfying, very comforting. They allow you time with yourself. They allow you to be who you are with just yourself. It is not a social craft at all because you cannot talk and weave at the same time. It is not a community craft per se. It is an individual craft, but it does give you that time to just be and to work with your hands to create something very beautiful from almost nothing. Anything that I weave can possibly be bought as machine-made or store-made. Vice versa, I can weave anything that I can buy in the store. So why do I do it? I do it because each piece of fabric that I make can be made a little bit differently. I can put things into my weaving that I cannot find in a store. I can choose the quality of the fibers that I put into my weaving. I tend to weave mainly with natural fibers, so cotton, linen are my favorites. I will weave with wool, I will weave with silk, and now of course we're starting to get soya fibers and bamboo fibers and so forth as well. Hand-woven materials that I have woven have lasted for almost as long as I have been weaving, so I have pieces that are 25 or 30 years old that I still use on a daily basis. For example, people say, why weave a tea towel? Well, I weave a tea towel because the tea towel that I weave will be made of the cotton. I know the fiber that goes into it. I know that I can machine wash and machine dry that tea towel 1,000 times and it will still come out being just as good as it was the day that I wove it. So the quality is much greater in a hand-woven item than it is in a store-bought item. The time, of course, is much greater, and the fibers that you put into it are a higher quality.
Although weaving can become a complicated process, there are basic patterns and looms for the beginner. The setup of the loom often takes more time than the process of the weaving itself.
The weaving time itself is actually probably only a third of the total time. It's the setup time that's required. It's the designing time ahead of time. It's the setup time of the loom. And new weavers are often very surprised at how long it takes to set up a loom. It takes them, relatively spoken, well over half the time to set up the loom, sometimes up to 2/3, and then they get the 1/3 of the time weaving. So weaving the cloth is the most satisfying, but also the least time-consuming.
One of the major considerations of someone who is starting to weave is the tools needed to begin. There are many different styles, sizes, and price ranges of looms to choose from.
Generally, people start with a small floor loom or a small table loom. Table looms are easy to use, they're easy to learn on. They do have some drawbacks in that they're not as quick to weave on, but they are portable and they are very readily available. Then you get into the floor loom. This loom here is a 22-inch loom. That is your standard loom. It's called a counterbalance loom. It has rollers that your shafts work on, so it is one kind of a loom. You have several things on a loom that are standard from one loom to the other. You have the warp, which is the vertical threads coming through. You have the weft, which are the horizontal threads. That gives you your weave or your fabric. You have the shafts, which contain petals, and they have little openings in them. So each individual thread goes through a heddle opening. So each thread has to be threaded through an opening like this in the heddle, and then it has to be threaded through this reed here. The reed spaces the fabric out so that you have the same density across the whole width of your cloth. The threads that are threaded through the shafts, you'll see that there are 4 here, are threaded in a specific order according to a pattern. So for this particular one, they are threaded 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. If I wanted a different pattern, I could thread them 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, or in any other combination of 4. After it has gone through the shafts and the heddles, through the reed, here in the front, it goes around here, and then it is tied onto what we call the front or the cloth beam. Once the weaving progresses, of course, it's going to roll down over the front. At the bottom here are treadles. These treadles are connected in such a manner that when you press on them, things will go up or things will go down. And that forms an opening. This opening is where the thread goes through for the weaving. So as you're weaving through, the thread will go through here, come out the other side, and then you're going to beat forward, and that actually forms the cloth itself.
Weaving, like spinning, is just one step in the creative process used in making something beautiful. The satisfaction of completing that end product may come long after you've taken the cloth from the loom.
Fabric, when it comes off the loom, is not finished. It looks very rough, it looks very coarse. You'll see it on some of the fabrics that are here. It really doesn't look very pretty at all. Fabric isn't finished until it has been washed or ironed or mangled. And then when you create something from that, that is when the satisfaction really is there. It's a wonderful feeling to take a piece of cloth off a loom after you've woven it, because of course it is all rolled up and you have no idea what it looks like until you unroll it and you see all this beautiful cloth that you've created. But I think the feeling is even greater after you have, for example, woven a blanket and then washed it and realized how soft and warm and luxurious and comforting that blanket is.
For more information on weaving, or maybe you would like to take a course in one of the textile crafts, check out the Simcoe County Arts and Crafts Association website at www.skaca.ca.